Three, two, one. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode after a long delay on our part for different reasons of Reality Check Podcast. I'm Carlos. I am joined tonight by I am Spartacus Marcus, who is currently fighting a battle, so it fits, and Raul Mas, as always. Um, our topic tonight, if you look at the title, is how foreign sources and NGOs are undermining Trump's court battles over immigration. That is our topic, and we will get to it. But it would be unforgivable to not first touch on this incredible, heroic rescue that took place. I mean, the symbols are just, my God, they're everywhere. Good Friday, they're shot down. One is rescued quickly, and A10 manages to ditch in the sea. Easter Sunday, their time over there, in the dark of night, we rescue the injured colonel, the Wuzzo, and he's up on a ridge deeply hidden in a crevice. Guys, this is movies. This is a movie. The guy, if they make
he's in a cave. He was in a cave. The only thing missing was like rolling a rock over it. Kind of like I think he was. On Easter Sunday he gets saved. It's like wow, man.
He was in a crypt, but I mean, this guy, if they don't do it too far from now and too long of the distant future, he can play his own part. But if he so chose, but it is you see movies and you say what a load of crap. No, sometimes it's not a load of crap. How contrived? No, it's not always contrived.
Yeah.
I just think that the prayers of this country, I do believe that God was watching over him, and he had kind of like an electronic guardian angel. I understand there was a drone watching over him. It just gives me goosebumps to think about it. And equally, in the happiness of it all, I am revolted by a part of this country and political party that would have loved for that guy to be captured, to be made a martyr, to be treated, God knows, in what inhuman way, so that they can score political points against Trump. It is staggering. It is staggering that we have that many people in this country that would have cheered for that.
Yeah.
This country is in a fight for its soul. This country is in a fight for its very existence, from within, not just from without. Marcus, would you like to continue the topic?
No. I'll talk about it at the very end.
Okay, Raul.
So listen, I mean, my thoughts were just where to begin, man. I mean, we've been in this battle now for about a month. We've been very, very lucky. But when you've got that many missions running, that much military activity, shit happens, right? And in this particular case, I think that they got a lucky shot, like the president said. I mean, supposedly it was one of those man pads, a shoulder-fired missile or something, that just got through. I mean, at this point, the skies are safe provided you're not, doing sort of close-in air support, which apparently was what these jets were doing, right? I mean, they were pretty close to the ground, and one of them got hit. So it's unfortunate. I was not surprised, quite frankly, to see the way JSOC jumped into action and the personnel recovery activity fired up instantly. We got some of the best guys in the world in Air Force Combat Rescue. Apparently, Delta was involved. SEAL Team 6 was involved.
Special Forces.
Lost a couple of planes in the process because they got stuck in the mud. They had to blow them up on the way out. That's just equipment, man. I mean, you can't, that can all be replaced. What can't be replaced is, human lives and stuff. And I think it's a incredibly powerful signal to our men and women in uniform that if you get captured or you get stuck behind enemy lines, we're coming for you. I mean, that's incredibly important to maintain the morale and the spirit of the military. And so I think that that's a good thing. So I'm glad he's home. We got to see what's going to happen now. I mean, Trump has basically laid down thrown down the gauntlet and said, either you guys open the strait or we're going to bomb the hell out of you starting 8 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow evening.
The fucking straight. He said, open the fucking straight.
Yeah. He said, you know, you got to do this, or else, you know, starting to hit your power plants, your bridges, and I have no reason. The man has never given his adversaries any reasons to doubt him because he follows through on everything that he's been saying, right? I mean, you know, sometimes he pulls out at the last minute to give peace a chance, to allow the negotiations to proceed. But I think at this point, you know, he's probably pretty frustrated and just, you know, and I don't blame him. So I hope that people come to their senses, man. But I don't know, you know, I think there's just such chaos right now within their own leadership group that
Like who's in charge?
they've got somebody that has the power to sort of negotiate, right? So this might just end up being a free for all at the end of the day, you know.
Yeah, you knowing a lot about weapons, Raul. One of the things I'm into the details and the techie stuff. You know, the stuff that's under the seat and in the vest. I found that amazing. That under the ejector seat, there is a fold away specially designed AR-15, which can be quick assembled, no tools, and they carry a Sig M18, which is for those who don't know.
Apparently, I heard that the guy only had a pistol, so I don't know what happened. You know,
yeah.
That special weapon was developed a number of years ago. You know, the one thing about the Air Force when it comes to small arms is because they don't really use small arms except for protecting planes and stuff like that. I mean, they're the last to get, you know, the updated stuff. So they tend to just recycle. I mean, for years, people have known that, you know, they've got stuff in their inventory, an active inventory, that are just M16s, like from, you know, Vietnam, that they just keep, you know, upgrading and, you know, overhauling and, you know, bringing up to sort of modern specs with new barrels and stuff like that. But that particular weapon system was actually pretty cool. It was a company called, I'm trying to remember the name of it, had a pretty cool name, but they came up with this idea that, you know, to have an upper receiver where the barrel is quickly removable, and it's got a little latching mechanism on the upper receiver.
And pistol grip folds. Pistol grip also folds for compactness.
What's that?
The pistol grip also.
Yeah. That pistol grip is actually Israeli made. It's made by the Israelis. So the Israelis came up with it. It folds back so that because they have a limited space underneath in the ejection seat configuration to put stuff in. So they had to keep it to within a certain size. So the only way they could keep it within that certain size, I think it was around 20 inches or so, is they had to they could either break the receivers in two, but what they did is they kept the upper receiver and they just intact, and they just made the barrel a quick change type of barrel. So listen, it's 120 rounds of ammunition supposedly, but apparently he didn't have it, or maybe something happened, you know, maybe that rear seat, you know, for whatever reason, it was not, you know, issued to that aircraft or something. But they said he had a pistol. At least that's what I heard in the press conference. That he was only armed with a pistol.
Yeah, just a pistol. Also, looking aside from the weaponry, that's the part of your kit that is the most lethal. But if you're alone out in the boonies, surrounded by God knows how many number of hostiles, that's probably the part of your kit that you least want to have to use, because as soon as you start shooting, your location, everything.
Yeah.
You know I'm also in awe of he was wounded. He had a first aid kit which he knew how to use. He tended to his wounds, whatever those were, but he did patch himself up, and he scaled a 7,000-foot peak.
Well,
which is amazing enough.
And then years ago, I read a book that I think had a very simple title, like "Eject" or something. It was like all these stories of people that had ejected from aircraft, and you know, that is a very, very violent thing, right? I mean, if you think about it, you know, you're traveling, you know, 1,000 miles an hour or more, you know, 1,200 miles an hour, and you suddenly, you know, reach down between your legs, you pull that ejection handle, it, you know, breaks the top of the canopy, and you literally have an explosive charge under your belt, under your butt, that shoots you up into the air, right? And then the whole process of deploying the parachutes and everything else happens in just seconds, right? And you're traveling at supersonic speeds, so it's a very violent activity. A lot of people, a lot of pilots, oftentimes get hurt in the ejection process because they haven't brought in their arms. They end up breaking their arms on the way out, right? I mean, or they haven't put their feet up. I mean, you sort of have to, like, kind of push yourself back into the seats, and make sure. That's why you reach down, you pull that handle, because you got to be, you can't be having your arms, your legs out in front of you, because something will get broken on the way out. But those systems have been really perfected over the years. There's a company called Martin Baker that manufactures the modern ejection seats, and now they they're zero altitude versions. I mean, basically, you can be on the runway and you can eject from ground level, and that parachute will open, because the parachute is designed to open very, very quickly. But it needs, and the rocket shoots you up several hundred feet, so you're going to have enough time for that canopy to fill up and get you back on the ground. But it's all a very violent process, and pilots get hurt all the time in that process.
Given what you just said, I remember that so-called overzealous. I wonder what happened to that guy. Kuwaiti pilot had managed to shoot down 3 of our planes, friendly fire. I saw a video of a beautiful woman pilot, young lady, running like with her arms outstretched, like a love movie, to the arms of the rescuers when she touched ground. So thank God she was spared and didn't break anything. Her enduring experience was less so.
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, they've gotten better over the years, man, but it's still a dangerous. It's not an easy way to exit an aircraft, right? I imagine that supersonic speeds, right? That's why they got their face shields and all that stuff.
Right.
But it's an incredibly violent. You're pulling, I don't know how many G's when you get shot up out of that thing, right?
4 or 5, maybe.
Or, it's just, imagine that you got an explosive charge that goes off literally underneath your butt, and next thing you know is you're cracking through the canopy and out in the airstream, and you're going supersonic speeds, and the parachute, the seat separates from you, and the parachute deploys, and it's just a crazy sort of a system that's been developed over the years, but it saves lives.
How do you recover the seat if it separates? It's got to separate from you. You can't land with the seat on your ass.
I mean, there's an image there of the actual seat on the ground.
Yes, with the chutes around it.
Yeah. So I forget. There's a mechanism there to sort of push the pilot away from the seat.
Maybe a tether to keep it a little distant from you.
Once he pulls that handle, it's all basically automated from then on.
You've been describing what is a long known poetic term, hoisted on your own petard.
Yeah.
Literally, right? But for those who don't know, a petard is an old-fashioned expression for a rocket. It means shut up like a flag on your own rocket. That is an expression, a metaphor. But in the case of an ejecting pilot, it really happens. You literally a rocket up your ass. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the.
I just want to make a comment on that. I just want to make a point that, like, CSAR, combat search and rescue, is very complicated. You need, like, really simplified communications and a chain of command. And we've been fortunate that we've been in a state of war for almost 30 years. So we everything's more streamlined, everything's more rehearsed, all that level of inter-service communication has been sorted out. Imagine if we did this and we never been in combat for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, Russia or China, they wouldn't be able to do this. I mean, it's very complicated way of going, because you're dealing with a lot of different assets, from different services. You're looking at different types of communication gear. Very complicated.
What? They tell the pilot to kill himself. They're not going to send all those assets after a pilot. Russia, China, no way.
And we can't underestimate that. This is what Iran wants. They want capture somebody, American service member, live as political leverage, because they don't have air security, they don't have ground security, they don't even have sea security, they don't have anything. but
No.
having a human capital is leverage, and we're lucky to have the type of technology that we do, because you mentioned about they have like a drone coverage. When a pilot ejects or is, one of the things they have is a transponder to for them to geolocate that person, so they're never in the dark about the whereabouts. And yeah, and like part of their gear, they have like in their vest like air crew survival equipment. Like they have like a mirror, like sewing machine. They have pretty much everything to cover for the immediate use.
And
Yeah,
food
that vest that they carry has different like modules in it. It's got like a first aid module. It's got some food. It's got a little bit of
they want to fish or they want to make a fire.
Water. It's got
and a blanket,
survival supplies, all that stuff. Signaling equipment, things of that sort.
Reflective gear.
5 quarts of potable water.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I actually, somewhere in this house are a couple of survival radios from the Vietnam era, right? And back then, I mean, the model that I have, it's obviously unsecured, right? But it would transmit on 2 different frequencies, a civilian frequency and also military frequency, much higher. I think one was like 112.5 and the military was 240, whatever that is, 243 megahertz. And back in the days, that was just like a walkie-talkie, right? But what they have now, because that was just an open channel, right? And it's actually referred to as the guard channel, and it still operates on commercial aircraft. They call it the guard channel, and they monitor that particular frequency, 112.5 megahertz on the civilian side, and it used to be 243, I think, on the double that in the military side. So VHF and UHF, ultra high frequency, and the radio you could either select. If you were talking to a civilian plane, 112.5 megahertz. If you were talking to a military plane, you talk at ultra high frequency. But all that went away because that was open communications. So the latest communications devices that they have are really sort of satellites, and they're encrypted, and they shoot the information in bursts, very short bursts, so that it's very difficult to capture or intercept. Because the other one, you could just home in on it with a regular sort of radio frequency, finder type of stuff. But these new devices are much more sophisticated. They have, the geolocation. And by the way, those old radios have gone away. I mean, even for civilian purposes, now the civilian radios that are on life rafts and on civilian planes, they're the same thing. They're operating, I think, at a whole different frequency level, and they're basically satellite phones. They're communicating with low Earth orbit satellites, and they give the if you were to go into Cabela's, not Cabela's. What do you call that store now? The
Bass Pro Shop.
Bass Pro Shop, and you go to the fishing section. You can find these devices, right? Because they're popular with people that have like small, boats or whatever. It's literally a beacon. If you have to abandon ship, it sends a distress signal. Some of them are activated when you fall into the water, but others manually activate them. But what the military has is obviously something built by Boeing that probably costs like $100,000 or something a piece. Who the hell knows? But it's a much more sophisticated communication device, and it has all the abilities in there, right? It's got the ability to send the information in satellite form, short bursts, encrypted. Gives a location of where the pilot is. When he activates it. So they probably had a very good idea of where he was, but in that terrain, even with satellite communications, you have to have a clear line of sight to the satellites, right? So it's not necessarily perfect, right? And once you crawl into a cave like he did, or a crevice, not a crevasse, a crevice on the side of a mountain, you can't you don't have that line of sight, so you kind of lose the location of the person. So
Yeah. Well, I think what the beacon, isn't that what's the acronym is EPIRS, I think.
yeah, it's Emergency Personnel Recovery System or something, EPERS.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because that's what they have on boats. And well, they have a small raft. These guys also, these aviators have a small raft.
Yeah, if it's over water, something like that, I mean that would have, that was probably part of their kit. But again, I think those things are activated if you land in water, right? I mean, it senses that you're in water and it'll inflate or if a pilot knows he's coming in for a water landing, I don't know how he activates it. I think he deploys it, before it hits the water, and he's got something to swim to. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, even the airline planes will tell you if in the event of a water landing, there's a device that will activate with contact with water. All right. So are we ready to go on to our topic tonight?
yes, absolutely. Let's go.
All right. So anyone who's been following the issues of immigration, getting people out of here, and not just, and again, we're not talking about Lupita the maid or Pedro the gardener. We're talking about people with a rap sheet longer than our arm. They're getting judges, they're getting activist judges, they're getting foreign sources, NGOs from here that are funding activist judges, that are funding mechanisms, that are funding rent-a-mobs. Uh, I want to open this with, it's a little provocative, but I asked myself, given that this man destroyed currencies by shorting them, why and given that the Mossad could infiltrate Iran, I don't think of a country exists that hates Israel more than Iran. We had Mossad agents infiltrating there. Why is George Soros still alive? Why is Neville Singham still alive?
Look, George Soros is now a very, very old man.
His son.
But he is still causing an enormous amount of damage to this country. His son, his heir apparent, is married to Hillary Clinton's aide. Remember her? The
You
woman
mean Alex?
the woman that used to be Hillary Clinton's right-hand person, married. Huh?
Huma
Uma. Is that her name?
Abedin.
Uma Abedin married George Soros' son.
Wife.
Yeah, they're now husband and wife. So, that's imagine that. That's kind of a toxic relationship, right? The son of George Soros, multi-billionaire, now affiliated with Hillary Clinton's right-hand person. And, more money than God. And all these organizations are basically serving as cutouts for people like George Soros and other, very wealthy interests that, quite frankly, I think are on the wrong side of history, want to destroy this country, want to radically change it. But I think, they're going to be paying a heavy price for it because the big fundraising mechanism for the Democratic Party is this thing called ACT Blue, ACT Blue. The initial stand for something, some acronym or something. But that is always like the main organization that collects money for fundraisers. So, for example, if you, in my case, if I'm supporting a Republican candidate, when you go to the person's web page and you go to make a donation, you realize that the donation is going to the Republican Party's equivalent of ACT Blue. I forget the name right now. It's
WinRed.
WinRed, right? So it's WinRed for the Republicans. It's ACT Blue for the Democrats, right? So it's basically this, fundraising arm that every Democrat that's running for office, has their donations channeled through ACT Blue. And what the government has discovered is, all sorts of shenanigans with, again, you're alluding here, foreign sources in the title of our description, right? That, lots of donations have been made to ACT Blue over the years, using, gift cards, for example, right? I mean, paid with gift cards, oftentimes from foreign sources, right? I mean, and people that they can't find, right? I mean, because when you fill out that form, what does it ask you for? It asks you for a name, an address, an email, a phone number. Anybody can make that stuff up, right? They're not really verifying it. They just need to collect that data to then keep asking you for more money. And and then it asks you for a credit card number, and I guess you can put a gift card in there and pay with gift cards and stuff. But they're finding that Act Blue has been receiving tons of money from these sort of anonymous sources over the years, and it goes back to the whole thing about whether or not elections are in fact honest in this country and secured, whether the fundraising is legit or not, right? I mean, the whole thing of political fundraising is sketchy to begin with, right? Even when it's done right, right? But in the case of the Democrats, they have perfected it to be a mechanism for massive money laundering and getting money from people that absolutely should not be contributing to U.S. presidential campaigns or anything else. And I'm sure there's Chinese influence and Russian influence. I mean, think about it.
And Iranian.
And Iranian. Yeah. I mean, look. One of the things that's important, I think, for people to understand is that we live in a free country, and that's great, and we all appreciate that, and the Constitution guarantees it, right? But running a free country also means that we're not a police state. We're not looking over everybody's shoulder. We're not checking donations at the minute you make them. We don't have a huge secret police that's scrutinizing every single thing that you do in your life, although sometimes it feels that way. But we're vulnerable. As a free society, we're vulnerable to bad actors coming in and using our openness to destroy our country. And that's exactly what's happening here with our political system. They're using the fact that we have free and open elections, and we have this process where political candidates can raise money legitimately without payoffs and smoke-filled rooms type of stuff, and they take advantage of that. They take advantage same way they take advantage of the Soros and these guys taking advantage of I mean, one of the things that George Soros has done for decades is he's funded the political campaigns of a lot of these liberal attorney generals in places like California, Illinois, New York, and they've put in all these judges that absolutely are, making decisions based on democratic politics, not on the facts of the law before them. So,
two of which DeSantis removed from Florida. Marcus, please weigh in.
Yeah, I think when the Trump administration came on board, they realized that the biggest Achilles heel for the safety and security of this country is immigration. And then when you realize how much Trump is fighting everything that's centered around it, because there's a number of key Supreme Court rulings that really is changing the dynamics of it, but they're fundamental. But what it also highlights is, as you mentioned, judges, they're constitutionally illiterate. These liberal progressive judges. Now I'm just going to break it down into basics because if we have a growing audience, like Article 1, Congress makes the laws. Article 2, President executes the laws and is required to take care of the laws and must be faithfully executed. Article 3 is the judicial court interpret the laws. Now, in terms of Article 1, the legislative, there is Article 1 courts, but they mainly deal with like financial issues. So you get the U.S. Tax Court, you got the Court of Appeals for veteran claims, for the armed forces, and they got for federal claims like contracts and torts. Article 2, which is executive, they have the Immigration Court, run by the Department of Justice. Article 3 is the judicial, where they have the lower courts and the Supreme Court. So the biggest crux is that some of these lower courts are ignoring the immigration court system, because anything immigration is dealt with Article 2 court system. So you get Article 3 judges encroaching upon Article 2. And on top of that, they're under Article 2, the president faithfully execute the laws. And the law is the Immigration and Nationality Act. So if he's faithfully executing laws within the immigration court, you get these Article 3 judges overstepping the law and and the jurisdiction. So there's a number of court issues where like the travel ban, where Trump's unilaterally said, "Hey, a number of these countries, we're not going to let them through," and because we have national security and security concerns. So you get like countries like Somalia, Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Sudan, and Yemen. Then you get Cuba as well. In some of these countries, it's because there's no adequate vetting or information sharing, like Afghanistan. Their passports, they that the Taliban acquired, they've been repurposing them to export terrorism abroad with Afghani passports. And then you get like a high rate of visa overstay. So you get a number of these countries, like as soon as they come in as a B1 or B2 or for education purposes, they overstay, violating the terms of the visa. So you get like maybe 70% overstay. It's like, no, he's canceling that. Then you get like a recalcitrant countries where
Yeah.
if we're going to deport them, the host country has to receive them, and a number of countries like China says we don't want to take them in. So that's why Trump says, we're having these travel bans for a number of these countries, and it's based on INA 212F, where the President of the United States has the authority to suspend entry of certain non-citizens under certain circumstances. He outlined it. You get all these lower court judges challenging it, and it's like, well, and the Supreme Court says, well, this is under Article 2 courts, and he's following the INA. So it's like it's either creative stupidity or ignorance under their own judicial standards. It just kind of baffles me.
I think it's rather than that, or maybe some of that, but I think it's intentional interference. And given all that, you've just been detailing about keeping certain nationalities for obvious reasons out of here. And I'm asking myself, if the Supreme Court did give supremacy to federal law over state law or local law, why the fuck is that Kilmar Abrego still here and that Khalil Muhammad, whatever, who Mamdani recently honored it and had him for dinner at his house? Why are those people here? Why don't they just send them the hell out and fuck the judge? What's the judge going to do to Trump? Subpoena him? What's he going to do?
Well, that goes under. There's been at least 5 rulings by the Supreme Court dealing with immigration. So the one I talked about was about the travel ban, and then the other part about Abrego Garcia is about expedited removal and asylum restrictions. If that's the one about it. So the problem with about expedited removal is like it has to go through Article 2 courts, but you get Article 3 judges making rulings saying that we have to be concerned about due process or credible fear concerns. But credible fear is an Article 3 INA thing that Article 3 judges don't have a say in the matter. And then in terms of expedited removal, like for removal purposes, there's guidelines that we follow, but the Article 3 judges totally disregard it. So in terms of like the guidelines, there are 2, like any non-citizen who arrived at the port of entry at any time and is determined to be inadmissible for fraud or misrepresentation or lacking proper document entries is entitled for expedited removal and asylum restrictions. Number 2, any non-citizen who entered without inspections by land or sea, was never admitted or paroled, is encountered anywhere in the United States and cannot prove they have been physically present in the United States for 2 years preceding the immigration officer's determination that they are inadmissible for fraud and misrep or lacking any proper entry documents. So we have ICE or immigration judge have within their prerogatives to remove Abrego Garcia. But you get these Article 3 judges saying, well, you know, due process. And it's like, well, if it's already proven that he's here illegally, he doesn't have due process concerns.
He already had it.
He already had it through an IJ immigration judge. And the thing is, the asylum credible fear applicants, there's already like a 5 or 6 year backlog, and for them to for the Article 3 judges to say, well, everyone needs due process. Well, then that's for 4 million or 5 million people. That's going to take 20 years. That's why there is a thing called expedited removal and mass removal, where everyone is in the same situation. Like, and it's the documents are pretty same. Like, you are not a citizen of the United States. You are a citizen of Cuba, Venezuela, Iran. You were never admitted. You you don't have a claim, and that's like pretty much they can't refute. And the IJ just says, well, you guys are removed.
Well, it's a rigged system. Article 2,
well,
Article.
They say, well, the article, people who are filing complaints saying it's rigged, but they cannot refute that they're here illegally.
Right.
They have a claim, and if they're claiming asylum, well, they haven't been admitted. They have to go like 1 or 2 countries before then to file for asylum into the U.S. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, my fear is that, let's just cut to the chase. Also, was not helping. We have 2 Johns. You know who they are? John Thune and John Roberts. Okay.
Yeah.
Those 2 Johns are fucking this country up. Seriously. By interfering, by being activists. Roberts, again, thank you, idiot George W. Bush, is doing immense damage to this country. He cannot be trusted. And I'm not talking about because he should be Republican, because he should be Democrat. He picks and chooses. He saved Obamacare. Let's not forget. He saved Obamacare and said that what they call it a tax. That is a serious problem. And then with the other John is slow dragging everything through the Senate by interfering. The only solution for all this to me is passing federal laws that revamp all of that. And it will be fought viciously because the illegal vote is how they juice up the census to get the seats in the House and to try to throw elections with the hope of turning them into voters. I'd love to hear any input from either of you on that particular aspect, that the root cause of this is not being addressed, and therefore is why this is a lingering problem.
I say it's money. Money is the root of all evil. You look at Republicans; it's all about getting cheap business, cheap labor for some of these corporations. That's one. You get, Chamber of Commerce. They're even for cheaper labor for cheaper cost.
Yeah, I remember a remark on Rush Limbaugh that a guest said, the problem, Rush, is Republicans want them to vote but not work, so they can give them the welfare. Republicans want them to work but not vote. Democrats want them to vote but not work.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
I think Mark is onto something, man. Politics is a dirty business, man, and everybody, for years everybody's been trying to sort of outsmart the other side, but the Democrats have gotten extremely good at it and extremely good at doing stuff that, quite frankly, I think is just unconscionable. And I think they've gotten caught now with their hand, not just in the cookie jar, but both hands in the cookie jar, and they can't get them out. But politics is a dirty business, man, and everybody wants to cut of the action. Everybody wants to, that's how government works. And it's ironic because if you think about it, there's something called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act that prohibits U.S. citizens from bribing people overseas. Okay, in 1998, Congress amended that, so now we can actually go after foreign individuals for bribing their own officials. Okay, believe it or not, even though they're not in our country, we can go after foreign officials that are bribing their own governments. But here in America, if you set up a political action committee and you donate $500,000 to the Trump campaign, or you're a private donor to his ballroom for millions of dollars, that's perfectly legit. And in fact, the Supreme Court has said that political fundraising is protected because it's considered to be a form of free speech. So you could argue that in America, bribery of political officials or influencing officials through donations, is perfectly acceptable. It's legal, and in fact, the Supreme Court has put its seal of approval on it.
Well, but here's the thing: you get like George Soros, he's Hungarian. You get Singham, he's maybe Chinese or British Chinese.
With Soros, I'm sure has been a U.S. citizen for a while, man. I mean,
but the thing is, an argument could be made like you could like what is it? They have to register as a foreign agent if they're doing things on behalf of other countries.
Right.
It's like because there's like supporting like communist China or the International Communist Party or International Socialist work on behalf of them. It's like I don't know if there's an investigation going, because I'm sure I've heard talks about trying to investigate him for not being acting as a foreign agent.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm remembering a guy that I met actually at a demonstration, and he was a Democrat, but he was an old-style Blue Dog Democrat. And he came over and we spoke, and he eventually became an independent and maybe a Republican. I haven't heard from him in ages, but there were two takeaways that he would always say. One is that as long as, this was when he was still a registered Democrat, as long as you Republicans keep treating elections and issues like garden parties, while Democrats treat them like wars, you will continue to lose. And the other thing he said, and this is about the voters, and I know that it's very difficult to vote out an incumbent, no matter how corrupt. But he said the average American, if they've got a burger in one hand, the remote in the other, and the game is on, they don't give a shit about anything else. And that is a sad reality.
Yeah. Well, another thing I want to bring up is that like the left would make an excuse like, well, there's always a possibility of deporting a U.S. citizen by accident. And the thing is, there's a big fallacy to that. I mean, we're talking about like less than 1.00001% that a U.S. citizen would be deported, because a number of things like for CBP or ICE or USCIS, they have various systems in place to note if there's a non-immigrant or an illegal who had been in the system. And one of them is everyone has like a FIN, like a fingerprint identification number. Like if you get if they capture you, you get fingerprinted and it's into the system. So like in Afghanistan, anytime they meet a potential hostile or not, they get their FIN done. Fingerprint identification. Everyone has, it's like a social security number. Everyone has a unique FIN. So when they go, like when you have people crossing the border, they would lie about their name. They would lie about, provide a fake ID maybe, or even a fake passport, provide a fake social, but they would get their FIN. So if they try to do things legally, it would show all these little encounters that using different names, but the same FIN. You see the same photos, and then it'll also show like their immigration history, like whatever visas they applied to or not. So when you get people who come in illegally, never been documented by ICE or Border Patrol or CBP, and they're not in the system, and when they try to say they're a U.S. citizen and it just doesn't add up. It's a weak argument, for one. I just wanted to say.
When you were talking earlier, Raul, about the money, and obviously money is nonpartisan. Money is money. It's expungible, and it's can be doled out in any way, shape, or form. I'm reminded of something that Dan Bongino said. He said the problem in this country is that there are no Democrats in the Republican Party. There are no, excuse me, I misquoted. There are no Republicans in the Democrat Party, but there are Democrats in the Republican Party. And I see that more and more.
That's how we call them rhinos, right? The Republicans in name only. There's a name for them, right?
Exactly.
And and I think one of the reasons, I mean, how to describe this, man? I mean, think about Congress, right? So you get elected to Congress, and guess what? It's a pretty nice gig, right? I mean, you're making, six figures. I think with the salaries around $180,000 a year these
Yeah.
days, right? You have additional monies allocated to you to run an office in your district. Um, you have, monies for housing in Washington, D.C. I mean, all these things that kind of make your life easy, and you get much more time off than the ordinary, working stiff that's lucky to get 2 weeks a year.
And you might sleep with a Chinese spy if you're lucky.
Yeah, you get a Chinese spy to sleep with you if you're lucky.
No MSP.
You on top of that, you get state of the art healthcare, right? I mean, if you get sick, you go to Walter Reed, and the doctors, there are first rate, and they take care of you. You have, you don't have bodyguards, but you have, while you're in the Capitol, you've got, security, et cetera, et cetera.
Private jet.
It's a nice life. There's special privileges for you to cut through the lines at DC's National Airport, right? I mean, you get expedite.
Except for
And so what ends up happening is, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you get into office and you're like, wow, this is kind of nice, right? I mean, it's a nice job. I get paid a lot of money, and everybody's after you and wanting to. Now everybody wants to give you money because you now have something that's very valuable to them, which is a vote. And every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the lobbying industry is going to come knocking on your door, pleading their case for, why the money that they get from the government, should in fact be kept in the budget, because, they're doing God's work. No matter what it is, they're all supposedly doing God's work. And it's all incredibly important to the country, and the country can't live without their particular, expertise. And it's just the whole system is geared. It's all about money and greasing the gears of government. And tell me, man, I've people always have asked me, why haven't I run for office? I'm always involved in politics and all this shit. I'm like, man, because I don't, I think people, when you get in the office, you just get corrupted. I mean, it's just very easy to fall into that, or either that, or you become retarded because you start doing shit that goes contrary to everything you said you were going to do during the campaign. And I think it's just a very, the system is, I think if America's founding fathers were alive and would see what Congress and what representative government in America has turned into, I think they'd want to go back into their graves, because I think they would just be so shocked at what has been created, and a government that is now 39 trillion in debt, with paper money, not gold or silver, which was the money that was defined in the Constitution as being money. Okay. They'd be, I think, very upset. Marcus?
Before I get to you, Marcus, you said about running, this may shock both of you, but on different occasions back in the day when I was active in advocacy, 3 different legislators told me that I should run for office. Imagine me in public office.
I don't think you would have lasted very long. I hate to tell you, bro.
Exactly.
Neither would I, for that matter,
Right. Marcus, please weigh in.
Just kind of tying what Raul said about the level of disgust and how money is greasing everything. Well, let's take it at the extreme example. Under Biden, the border was open. We had ghost flights. And here's my big thing about Bondi and Cash Patel. Nothing's being done to handle what transpired under Biden. who contracted these airlines to ship people in the middle of the night from one city to another, especially from blue areas to red areas. Uh, and another thing is, I was quite aware that there was an international underground railroad where if you get like 20 million people coming in 4 years time, they're going through established ports, established flights, established uh, 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 ships and vessels, and everything is tracked. Everything has an identification number, especially like even vessels. Like satellite, you could see what vessel is tied to. They already have an ID number to it. Same thing with planes, and it's not like the federal government is ignorant about that. I mean, they could see where the flow of people were coming to eventually to Panama through the Darien Gap, and it's like, and then you get using cartels and the coyotes and with IGOs, international government organizations like in the UN, like the refugee or asylum, they're funding that. You get like charitable organizations funding them to get through illegally, and it's like everyone knows this is a bad deal, but they just went along with it.
Yeah.
And then how government was paying people to for little kids to be taken care of without any vetting if they're family members. So we get like hundreds of thousands of kids who disappeared.
No, listen, man, Marcus, you're absolutely right. That whole thing about looking after immigrants on the border between Mexico and the U.S., huge moneymaker. And there's been a lot of Democrats that have made tons of money doing exactly that.
And the fentanyl explosion.
An awful lot of pastors down there that have been living high off the hog, providing social services to these folks. So.
And that's considering that we have a sealed border, that they're not able to come across, but we still have a problem with the ones that are in. It's like fixing your door where the roaches are coming in. Now no more roaches can come in, but now you got to deal with the ones that are in your house and are multiplying.
Well, that's why there's a big focus on the birthright citizenship and the Save American Act.
Yeah. And what do you guys think the Supreme Court is going to do? I don't want to be cynical, but I do not trust Roberts and the court to uphold birthright, the ban on birthright citizenship.
I think they're going to defer to Congress to make the language more explicit instead of the Supreme Court make a ruling. They're not going to say yes or no. They're going to say that the Congress has to interpret what is the jurisdiction thereof.
Right, and we've lost Raul temporarily. Hopefully, he'll get back with us. So, what do you think the odds are of Congress doing a damn thing with that?
Well, nothing right now, but we got midterms, so we don't know how it's going to turn out as well about who retains control of the House and Senate.
Don't you think that would also be? Wouldn't that be also a very good campaign issue, though?
Yeah.
In other words, if it's not, use it. A lot of times Democrats don't want to solve anything; they just want the issue to run on. Let Republicans. We're talking about the.
I can hear you. I don't know why I got cut off there. I got blurred.
No worries. Use that against Democrats on the debates and the campaigns. Do you support Congressman, Senator? Do you support birthright citizenship? Yes or no? The American population does not favor birthright citizenship. I don't believe they do.
Well, look, man, it's like a lot of things, man. It's been abused, man. There's people, and again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We have this free society, okay, where we've created and I'm not trying to I'm trying to sort of point out the unfortunate side effects of a beautiful country that has privileges and rule of law and a bunch of things that are absent, quite frankly, in most of the rest of the world, right? But having a free and open society brings with it the nasty side effects of people manipulating those freedoms to their advantage. And I don't really know how you get around that, right? I mean, because in order to do so, you have to curtail some of those rights. You can't be a nice guy because
You have to
people take
profile it.
advantage of you, right? Because people exploit this openness in our system. They exploit
Yeah.
these weaknesses, and they use it to further their individual goals or their political party's goals. Okay, to the detriment of the country as a whole, right? And I don't know how you fix that because, I mean, like I said, man, I mean, look, the Supreme Court has basically said that, political fundraising is protected free speech. You ought to be able to give money to whoever you consider to be the best political candidate. So,
Well,
they've kind of told you, okay, look, go at it, man, because, but so long as you disclose it, we're fine with it, right? I mean, you can put certain guardrails, but then what happens? All these wealthy people like Soros and all these big, donors, they find ways to get around it. They set up political action committees. They donate money to this NGO over here that they know is, their favorite thing because they control it and it gets them favorable treatment elsewhere. I mean, it's sick, it's corrupt, it's dirty, but it's the American way, and I still wouldn't change it for anything else.
No,
Windle,
there are far worse. Marcus, go right ahead.
well, I just want to touch upon what Raul said about like being taking advantage of whatever political opportunity. I think the most pressing thing right now uh, is for Trump to finish the Iranian conflict as soon as possible, because wars cost money, and the thing is, it becomes a funding issue. At some point, he's going to reach out to Congress to to continue what is being done in Iran. And imagine the political fallout that he committed this action to deal with Iran, and Congress says we're not going to fund you anymore.
It's already hit Congress. The
But
fund,
you get like a razor thin margin with the Republican and Democrats. Then you get some Republicans who I'm not going to fund this. You get Macy, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You get a few other people
Murkowski,
where what?
Tom Tillis.
Yeah, you get a few of them. It doesn't take much to make that a no vote with the amount of razors to merge, and then and every action is a political message, and then if he doesn't get funding, then he loses his credibility on the international stage and among the U.S. voters. So that's a big, what the fuck.
Yeah, he needs to finish it, but he needs to do it, with as much completion. And by the way, Raul, I would say also to what can be done. It's interesting that we talk about how difficult all this is to combat, to expose, to prosecute. One kid with a cell phone has created havoc in Minnesota, and he's doing it now in California.
yeah.
That's one way to do it.
Well,
They
yeah,
come up with ways. We come up with ways.
that is also. I mean, thank God. I mean, look, I complain about the press and the bias in the press and stuff, but now you have this new generation of these independent journalists, like you say, with a cell phone that are going out and they're doing the work that these big media companies refuse to do, which is to investigate corruption and graft and I mean, that guy set the world on fire, with that video of the
Surely.
of
The
the of
Learing
the
Center.
of the what the Learing Center. What was it called?
The
Learing
Quality
Center.
Layering Center. I want to
The
get a
what?
sweater. I want to
The
get a
what?
Quality Layering sweater.
He's
Yeah,
got a polo shirt.
Quality Learing Center, right? I mean
Yeah.
He
that's
wears the
brilliant,
shirt
man. I
on
mean, the
camera.
guy just he spotted that, and you know something, the beauty of that is I think every American, okay, who is honest with themselves, looks at that and says, "Wow, man, that is wrong." Okay, that is wrong. That there is so much in your face, open corruption, in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and
In LA.
right before we came on this program, I was watching, a news report about the friggin' famous train to nowhere, $125 billion project in California where there's not a single line of track laid, and yet all this money has been spent. And where has it gone? Well, of course it's gone to line the pockets of political donors, of politicians, of all these people that stand to benefit from a corrupt government.
Steve Hilton has been exposing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Of like $1 billion, I think 17 million were used for a particular intended purpose. The other 920 something million went to different pet projects. What do you guys think are the odds that Gavin Newsom will be the candidate for 2028? I think he's going to get skewered in their primary.
I don't know, man, but the Democrats don't have, they've got a couple of candidates that are relatively unknowns that I think would be much better than a Gavin Newsom. I'm trying to think the name of the Andy something, the governor Bashir.
Andy Bashir, yeah.
Andy Bashir, right? There are a handful of those Democrats that are still, considered quote unquote moderate, right? That have been co-opted. In the case of Andy Bashir, he's really, I mean, Kentucky is a red state. I mean, it voted for Trump, right? But because he's kind of seen as a moderate, and he's managed to become governor and remain as governor for some time now, he'd be a potential candidate. Who's the governor of Josh Shapiro, from Pennsylvania, although he's kind of gotten off the reservation lately. But John Fetterman, of all people, man, I mean, Lurch could run for president. I think he's got a better shot at it, right?
Yeah, can you just imagine it? And by the way, Bashir is from Kentucky. Kentucky still has blue laws. Kentucky still has dry counties. Kentucky gave us Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and Bitch McRhino, which is what I call McConnell. It may be red, but it's one fucked up state, Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's traditionally it's that's the Hatfields and McCoys, man, West Virginia and Kentucky,
lazy hillbillies and ghetto rabble. That's what how I always describe Kentucky, which is why I could never run for Congress.
But it's the bluegrass state. They got lots of horses and a big horse race there once a year, and I've been there. It's a pretty cool place. I've actually met Andy Bashir. I met Andy Bashir a couple of years ago. I shook his hand at some thing that was being inaugurated there. And just spoke briefly to him, but he's, apparently well received and well known in the state. But whether he's got the ability to take that and become a national candidate for the Democrats, I don't know. Gavin Newsom is sucking up all the oxygen in that room. He obviously wants
and in the wrong ways. Marcus, go ahead.
Well, I think with Trump focusing on fraud, just kind of looping it back in terms of candidates as well. Having J.D. Vance as fraud czar, having a DOJ appoint somebody specifically tied to fraud, and not having a 1.5 to $3 million cap, where fraud is fraud, you can't ignore it. So I think with a renewed focus, it's like a multi-prong. Well, it's a multi-tool for the Republicans to use. It could discredit like people like Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer and who else who and whatchamacallit from Minnesota, just to either kill their presidential chances or any more political aspirations for perpetuating fraud. They could use it for like investigations. Hey, you condone this. So it's a good way for the Republicans to deal with the fraud as well as damaging any potential candidates in the Democratic Party.
Well, also, we're seeing, I think, a glaring example of the difference between a vice president with and with a fighting spirit, a killer instinct that actually does shit, versus a cackling buffoon who was the borders. I've never been to Europe either. We're seeing an incredible contrast of what a Veep is supposed to do and what JD is actually doing versus the bubblehead that we had before.
Might not even be Newsom. It might be Kamala Harris running again.
Oh yeah, I
Word
don't think so.
salad.
I don't think that the DNC, I can't see them running another Californian. It's too fucked up and failed the state. I think. As a matter of fact, I think Steve Hilton, I believe he's leading right now and I could be wrong, but in the gubernatorial, I think he's leading. Can you imagine if Steve Hilton won
They've got a
governor?
lot of people running for governor on the Democratic side, and I've heard that maybe you end up with 2 Republicans on the ballot, and no Democrats. That would be. I think people would then commit like mass seppuku there. I mean, all those liberals will just start wailing and hopefully commit ritual suicide in the process.
If they want to commit seppuku, I will volunteer to sharpen their katana. Well, guys, I think it's been lively tonight. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I am praying for a conclusion to Iran, and of course for God to continue to watch over our armed forces, our men and women in uniform. They have proven that they are just incredible. There's nothing short of incredible that can be said about them, and resilient and brave and resourceful. And I just hope that this thing can be terminated, with extreme prejudice, as they say, and that we can move on to the other things that were talked about tonight and that are an absolute must. Would you like to bring in this thing home, Marcus, and then Raul after?
Yeah. Before, I'll mention again on Netflix. Check out The Singers. It's been Oscar nominated and Oscar won. It's an 18-minute short. Hilarious.
The Singers,
The Singers. Just check
On where? On where?
on Netflix.
like barbershop singers, opera singers.
It's set in a bar, a dive bar, where there's like $100 bill, and whoever could sing the best wins the $100 and a bar tab. So it's like everyone's outdoing each other, but the ending is hilarious.
I'm going to
Yeah.
see it tonight.
It's a
Raul,
short. What is it? It's a short film or something?
Yeah, and it won an Academy Award.
But yeah, there's a
18
short film
minutes. But it's great lighting, good directing, uh, good dialogue. It just and everyone who's singing did a good job. But it gets up. The ante gets up each time, and when you think it's over, it's actually not. But it's hilarious.
I will check it out. Raul, let's wrap this baby up.
So nothing, man. I mean, just seeing what's going on in the world. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. with that deadline that Trump has. But I will reiterate what I've been saying for some time. I've spent practically my entire adult life living with the spectrum of, the spectacle of these terrorist attacks, all over the world. It started with Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Liberation Organization and all those crazies back in the 70s, and then Iran happened, and now they became the state sponsor of terrorism throughout the world, and Hezbollah and Hamas and all this stuff. And I don't want my grandchildren to grow up in that world. So as far as I'm concerned, pedal to the metal, finish the job, get rid of these guys one way or another, by hook or by crook. And again, this is no reflection on the people of Iran. I mean, Persia, is one of the great, centers of civilization in the ancient world. highly educated population, big country,
Yes,
90 million people. Okay. They deserve something better than these, nutcases, radical
absolutely.
fanatics who want to bring about, Armageddon in order to, bring the profit back or whatever. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
crazy
that
stuff.
I
Mark,
just want to I just want to touch based on that. I mean, we've in a few podcasts we talked about Germany and Japan. Uh, there was like a de-radicalization program where you had to wage total war and occupy them to de-radicalize a whole generation.
Yeah.
Uh, Iran's been under theocratic rule for 47 years, even though there is polling saying that they're tired of it. My concern is you can't just, wham bam, thank you, man. There has to be somebody taking control to where there's a de-radicalization program, because you don't want like mullahs. You don't want that permeating like a cancer to foster and grow. You want it to be rooted out. So somebody, like I said, like based on World War II, they took control, and they had to take charge, and it was total war, not
yeah.
this, a quick 2-month excursion just to root it
Yeah.
out.
But also a contrast to that, one of a big difference is that the countries you just described, Germany and Japan, had their militant abuses, but they were cultures that worship life, not cultures that worship death, and they were not Islamic. I think there will be a civil war in Iran, and let them duke it out. We can't go in there and fix that, but arm them with the wherewithal to do it. I think those mullahs have to be either marginalized, exiled, or assassinated if necessary. There's going to be blood in the streets of Iran, is my prediction. But at
Yeah,
least give us
let the Iranian people figure it out, man. Sit back
exactly,
and wait to see what the
yeah,
outcome is, and hopefully
exactly.
it's replaced with something better. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to imagine a worse regime than what they have right now. So I don't think I think you're going to
They'll have a
get.
helping hand. They'll be like CIA. They'll be Mossad, providing intel. They're providing help with the liquidation squads. I think it'll be like an all hands on board in the shadows if that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be. All right. So with that, again, enjoyed this topic tonight. Enjoyed as always interacting with you gentlemen. And look below there, like and subscribe if you like what you've heard tonight. And with that, God bless America, and I bid you all a good night.
Take care, guys.